No, not that I can remember. Nothing like being outside, you know, always in the streets of Sydney. No.
Yes. Now, when did you first meet Charles John, known as John Parkes?
Well, as I said, our signal station was cut into the side of the hill on the middle of his father's dairy farm, and we used to be taken down there by a truck. We piled in the back of the utility and go down. He had come back from the war, and his brother, although I didn't know him, I never ever went near the dairy, but there was one of the girls on my shift who, she was a country girl, and she got to know John and she thought he was a really nice fellow. So she said to me that she wanted to really meet up with John, and there was a young fellow who worked with John's father, and his name was Tiger, of all things, and she said, how about we go to see a film in Richmond? And she said, I'll sort of pair up with John and you can keep Tiger, you know, interested there. So, but John always tells the tale that the first time he saw me, he decided he was going to marry me. He's always said that right the way through. So it didn't work out the way this Ruth wanted. And John asked me to go out. We used to go out, we'd go to see a film on the station, and then we'd go back to his parents' place and we'd have fresh orange juice or something like that, and then it was time for me to go to my shift, which we called dog watch, which was the night shift. He'd walk me down to the little signal station, and we went out like that, and then gradually we, you know, decided to get married and so on.
What hours was the dog watch?
That was midnight to 8.
Now, tell me, what was John's physical condition when you first saw him?
Well, I often wondered, you know, of course it's been a great surprise why I bothered, because he had very thin arms and legs, a big tum, much like those Biafran children. He was very yellow from Atterbury. He had hardly any hair left, and he was blind in one eye. And it wasn't until later I found out that he had not only had a big ringworm, but he had some other skin things. But you know, no, there's something very, very nice about him, of course.
Yes.
And I really didn't take much notice actually of his physical condition. You know, that was how he was, and that's it. But I can remember he was wearing, by that time, the proper army tunic, and the tunic used to hang from the tummy down instead of sort of close to the body. That's how big the tum was.
Yes.
And then gradually, he picked up, he put on weight, and the tum half disappeared anyway. And of course the blind eye, that was it. His hair grew, and gradually, and he lost that bright orangey yellow look from the Atterbury. But no, he certainly didn't look a very well man when he came back.
Maybe I could ask you to show us the pictures here. Well, admittedly, they are prior to.
Yes, that's the same.
Yes.
Yes, that's John before he went away.
Can I have that closer? Thanks. That's good. Yeah.
That's my favourite. I like that photo.
Yes.
Actually.
And you can see the angle he's wearing his slouch hat.
Oh yes, he doesn't like the way they wear that now. And that's the other one of him without his hat.
Yes.
That's that.
When that was reproduced, the photographer tore the edge of the
yes.
picture.
I wasn't happy about that at all.
No, thank you, Vera. Okay, so what date were you married?
On the 26th of April in 1947, which was a very unfortunate date. That was the date after Anzac Day, the day after Anzac Day. And I lived in fear that he was going to be, either wouldn't turn up because he'd be, you know, hungover from the day before, but he was very good that year. Yes.
Maybe I could ask you to show us the wedding photograph. That's lovely. I think we can bring it in a little bit closer if you don't mind. And that's fine. Thank you. Lovely gown. Was it made?
No, you're very hard to get things. Material, fabric was, you had to have coupons, and that was actually a second-hand dress, which was altered for me. bridesmaids' dresses, we had absolutely no choice. We managed to get some material sort of under the lap thing, and we had no choice. We had of colours or what sort of material. Very difficult because everything was still rationed, and but they looked quite nice in the end.
Well, that looks lovely. Who were your bridesmaids?
I had my older sister Joan and Ruth, the girl who was really very keen on John. And I didn't see her much after the wedding. In fact, I don't think I saw her after the wedding ever again. Who else did we have? And of course my younger sister Jill and John's younger sister Helen.
And what about John's attendants?
Oh yes, he had, well, it was to be his younger brother, and also a fellow called Bill Collins, whom John had worked with before the war, and they were the two, yes, that I can remember.
So where did you live initially?
Well, we lived on a farm. John was renting a farm at a place called Agnes Banks, and I was very much a city girl. That was a big shock to me. And we had quite a few floods then. That was when the Hawkesbury used to flood regularly. And so we moved to higher ground, to another farm on higher ground, and that's when they had a drought. And that just finished us completely. That was it. So we paid a few debts that we had and came down to Sydney. And we had nowhere to live. We couldn't afford to get a house. We lived for a little while with my sister and her husband, and then we managed to get a housing commission home.
Where was that?
That was at Villawood, which then was mostly bush, and there were 12 houses just dotted around. And it wasn't until we'd been there for a while that we discovered they all had the same keys. So we had some not very nice people who lived next door who used to come in and sort of have a good look at our place while we were out, I discovered much later. And then we...
Just before you leave that, just tell us a little bit about the house. How many bedrooms? What sort of hot water system did it have? Stove?
Yes, we had a gas stove. It had 2 bedrooms, and it was what's called a monocrete house. And it was ghastly really, because the room that our 2 girls were in, the moisture used to come through onto the wall and literally run down the walls. And Priscilla, the older girl, she would always have ear problems, like almost like a tropical ear was what she had. And one of the young doctors said, if you don't get her out of this house soon, they'll carry her out in a box. It was bad. We had, when we first moved there, the houses weren't quite ready. We had, I can remember for a while, I had a petrol iron, which I'd never seen before. We had a copper out the backyard. It wasn't for very long, but we had to have some primers inside, and then eventually they got the electricity through and the gas on and so on. Actually, it was quite a nice looking house, apart from this problem in the girls' room. And John immediately started with we had a lovely garden there. We planted trees and we had lots of flowers and things. And but I don't know, I'm not a snob, but they were really awful people around there. You know, they really were, most of them, let's put it that way. And we didn't really like it. And John was working, back then of course, working for the insurance company, he manufactures mutual insurance. And he worked late, he worked back, he used to work Saturday mornings. And Priscilla was just a little toddler, and I used to get her into her nightie and dressing gown, and we'd walk through the bush to meet John on the way home quite often. It was not easy living, but at least it was somewhere to live. Yes. And then we got out as soon as we could.
Now you were buying that, were you? Or was
no, that was the housing commission home.
Rental.
And then we moved to, we
built a house. Just before you leave it, can I just hold you there? You mentioned you had a copper in the backyard.